You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community. I am happy to welcome my guest today, who is going to share how to create a brand and product from the ground up. Ask you all to pause, subscribe, leave a review, like, follow, whatever it is that you're allowed to do on the platform on which you are listening to or watching this. With that, I want to get into introducing my guest today. Now, he is the Chief Strategy Officer for clients through his company, Quantum Branding, where they do workshops, 12-week courses, direct client engagements. It's an evidence-based branding agency based out of Nashville, Tennessee, my hometown. Helps clients create brands and products that sell. It works for both brands and agencies. The website name is quantumbranding.agency. And with that, I give you Stæven Frey. Welcome, Stæven.
Thank you for having me. I feel like we've done this before.
I feel like I'm getting like a sense of nostalgia and deja vu. Remind me though, how do I properly pronounce your name again?
It is phonetically Staeven, but I go by Stæven. So yes.
But the last name is Frey. Did I say that
Frey.
right?
Yeah, you said it correctly.
Okay, because it's Frey. So all right, just making that. All right, Staeven or Stæven Frey. Got it. So great to talk with you today. And I guess I want to just start by getting into giving a quick context for, talk about creating a brand, creating an agency, quick 2-minute context and background on yourself. Like, how did it get to be that you're doing what you're doing now? So we have some context.
Sure. So 2008, I don't know if anybody was in the occupational world working then, but come Christmas of 2008, the agency I was at closed and got our 2-week letters right before Christmas. And so it was a stressful time. I spent my whole vacation sending out resumes, didn't spend time with family, but that time caused me to reflect what I was good at, what I enjoyed. And so there were some, few overlaps of success and satisfaction in my paths. And they tended to be all about branding. I had been the creative director at an agency for the past several years, and then also went through undergoing rebranding 2 agencies that I'd worked at. And so I was like, yes, I want to continue to do this. So come January of 2009, opened the doors to my own shop. Also decided to get an MFA in my field in branding, and so was valedictorian 4.0, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to just get a degree in something I loved. And so the last kind of final piece came together. So I opened my agency, I go back to school to get my MFA, and then I discovered a couple books, and one of them was by Alina Wheeler, and it's Designing Brand Identity. There's several editions. Well, I had it on my shelf for years. Every few years a new edition came out. And while I loved it, and it was like almost like my handbook, or some would even say Bible, that I just always was going to, there was a component missing. And the component wasn't how to do branding. The component was why to do branding. And so it led me on a path today to understand the science of how brands grow and the science of how branding works. And so that really helped catapult my agency in my career and the work that I do from there.
That's awesome. I mean, I think a great side lesson on that for people, whether they're business owners of multiple people, they're solopreneurs, or whatever they are. Or even if they're still in their careers, is that question that you asked yourself when you were out of work, which is a question I asked myself also when I've been out of work in the past, which is, what is that nexus? Looking back at whatever you've done in the past, like, what's that nexus between what you enjoyed doing, like got paid for, and got satisfaction from? Right. If to the extent you can move your career or your business in that direction, you're going to make more money, you're going to be more effective, and you're going to be more happier and get more satisfaction. I mean, Not what we're supposed to technically talk about today, but just another lesson I take away from what you talked about.
Well, thanks. Thanks for pointing it out. And I definitely agree. There's something about, there's several books out there, The Power of Uniqueness by Arthur Miller Jr., or The Color of Your Parachute. Any assessments you can do into how you're wired and where you find joy, but also are really successful. Because there's things I'm good at that I don't enjoy. There's things that I enjoy that I'm not good at, finding those two.
Right.
So that
and there's
really,
things you enjoy
really
that don't make money.
This is true. This is true.
So it's probably not the best candidates for career or business ideas. Right. It's got to be all those things together. So speaking about creating a brand, like somebody wants to launch a new product, launch a new service, whatever it is. So thinking about this topic, that's your niche, that's your expertise. One of the things I wanted to cover with you are like what are the biggest, like if people are thinking about this topic, what are the biggest branding myths that need to be debunked?
Sure. So we first have to start, before I can even talk about what, branding. Everyone likes to talk about like what branding is, and they think like, yeah, this is what people feel about you. I really kind of side on the very functional side. I like to stick to where the science is. So marketing is the functional promotion of trade. You don't make cell phones. I don't make cars. I don't know, unless you make cell phones, and but we don't make cell phones or cars. So how do we know whom to purchase those things from? Think back to the days where I would trade you, a chicken for some, some cheese, or a barrel of something for some wheat. We no longer trade like that. We work in a modern economy, and so we have modern trade. So marketing facilitates modern trade. So marketing is literally, hey, do business with me. So if everyone's saying, hey, do business with me, how do we get people to remember whom to do business with? If everyone's saying, hey, and so this gets into the methodology of the types of marketing. So we have digital marketing, print. Originally we started with print and radio, and then there was the advent of TV and cable. And then I was in a conversation the other day, and someone said, yeah, it used to be called new media back in 2004, digital media. We called it new media, as if it was like something pioneering, so now we have everything from, online to social media to, trackers and bots and all those things function to facilitate trade. Branding is this really unique subset within marketing that says, hey, think of me first. And the way we do that is by having the most famous and unique or distinct brand assets that create memories. So really, it's about memories. It's like the movie Inception meets Total Recall, that you are planting a memory of the Win-Win podcast, with your typeface, your colors, and then all the other sensory assets, because really advertising works in the mind of the person. So advertising is saying, advertising and the marketing are the same thing. Advertising is just marketing you have to pay for someone to do for you, really. So a billboard, you had to pay someone to put it up there. So that's advertising. You paid for it. So marketing is do business with me. Branding is the subset of unique sensory assets: word, shape, color, story, illustration, photography, sound, music, character. If you host your own podcast, you are in sense a person that people associate. So then it's you, your name, your face, on top of all the other assets. So the goal is to get to people to think of you first. And brand science is this really nerdy quarter of marketing, which helps people assess how to grow and sell based on evaluating their brands identities, their sensory assets. So that's kind of the caveat. So to back up, your question was, how do we start? The first thing really is to evaluate your brand's assets. And your brand is more than a logo. Even if your logo, your brand mark, I call it, was designed by Michelangelo or somebody very incredible, the average business only has 3 assets, typically their name, their brand mark, their name. We'll make that 2, a color, and then, maybe a tagline, 3 or 4. The average commercial blue chip brand, think of Coca-Cola. How many brand assets do they have? They have 150 and counting. They have everything from the color to the word mark to a tagline to a song to a packaging shape to polar bears and Santa Claus. So anyways, now that we understand a little bit about brand science, I think we can hop over to your question. What are some of the things that we should and shouldn't be doing? If we want to be top of mind, what are the things that we want to be doing? So I actually I have 3 things that I brought today that we're going to poke the bear a little bit with, and you can decide if they're true and false. But those myths. So myth number 1, or statement number 1, the ultimate goal of marketing, and you can answer for the audience here for them. The ultimate goal of my marketing, true or false, is to show that I'm different. Is one of the major, or not ultimate, one of the major goals of my marketing is to show whether I'm different. What do you think?
Well, look, we talked a minute ago, or you mentioned a minute ago, how your goal is to think of me first, right? So then I would want to be different. I mean, true, right? Is that the goal of marketing? Thinking, right? I think you gave me a hint before, so I'm gonna say true. The goal of marketing or branding is to be different.
So actually, that's false. So brands, believe it or not, exist in their own category. And this is a great example of semiotics. Semiotics is the way that our mind puts things in little boxes. And if anybody's into sports or competitions, you're familiar with brackets, like the March Madness bracket. Think of that as how your mind thinks. So your mind thinks in categories that it makes as it goes along. We all live in the same geographic area. If we live in the same town, some of those boxes are going to be the same based on the things that we pass, the things that we see. So there's a lot of cultural contextualization that occurs. So that's why sometimes branding in America makes sense, but then you take that brand to Europe and it doesn't make sense because there's different meanings and contexts there. So to back up, our mind puts these things in these little boxes. So if you think of something in the fridge that is white, that's in the door, that's a condiment, that's in a jar, that's also a vegetable, your mind probably went, oh, milk, oh, no, eggs, up, mayonnaise, up, crap, horseradish. So your mind went through these little boxes, and it's that same thing. And so the best way that I illustrate this is to think of the cookie aisle. Do you have a favorite cookie?
Big fan of Oreos. Try not to eat them for, trying to maintain my girlish figure, but I am definitely
You're an Oreo.
Oreos.
Oreo. Yeah.
And,
so I like
currently eating them, but
I like Oreos as well. But what does it for me is white chocolate macadamia nut, and usually like the Pepperidge Farms or another brand that is kind of like crispy on the outside, soft in the middle. Usually they come in parchment cups and they're in a tall bag, but yours is Oreos. So yours is blue and it's in the tray with a sticky lid. And that's a really good example of a few things. One, it's an example of trade dress and customer cues. And then it's a good example of IP. So the IP is the name Oreo, intellectual property. IP is Oreo. It's the color they use on their package. It's Nabisco. It's the shape that's on the cookie. It's the story of dunking the cookie. Pepperidge Farms, mine doesn't have much of a story. Mine just has, the packaging. There's a little farm that's kind of neutrals. It looks bougie. I think we all used to think Pepperidge Farms was bougie until we started eating them. But that's a good example of trade dress. Certain cookies, sandwich cookies, are in trays. Fancier big chunk cookies are in parchment cups. And then
saying I don't want to, if I have a sandwich cookie, I don't want to not put it in a tray to be different. That's what you're saying.
So here's the interesting thing. Well, it's not about the tray. It's about following the customer cues. Can people easily navigate? Think of it. let's mix our metaphors even more. Let's say baseball. First base is the customer cues. We've got to get to first base with the customer and say, just what is it? Oh, chocolate chip, butterscotch, cinnamon, snickerdoodle. So we have to navigate what people are expecting in our category. So some of our branding has to share some of those common features of chocolate, chunk, ingredients, flavors, crispy, crunchy, soft, peanut butter, Skittles, rainbow, like what? Like whatever is in there that you expect in a cookie or may not expect in a cookie, but is in the cookie. So that's kind of first base. Third base is our other foul line. We have to stay within those bounds. We have to do what works is really the best way to describe it in our category. We can't reinvent the cookie because then it's not a cookie. Because if we try to do something different, you're not a cookie anymore. Your cake, your pie, your crackers, or your chips. And then you'd be in a different aisle and you wouldn't sell.
Right.
Well, if you were like, man, but Stæven, we're really distinct. We're homemade, we're handmade, handcrafted. We come in a little tub, we're baked fresh. Well, that's awesome. But you belong in the bakery then. You're all together a different category. So when customers are in your category or aisle, back to our first metaphor, they are looking for cues to understand who you are, what you do. They're not yet quite why it matters yet. They're on autopilot. And that's why brand science is so important, because our minds are on autopilot. And so if we're going to get people's attention, we have to disrupt them. We're not educating people. We're not explaining them our positioning. We're the best ABC in 1, 2, 3. Now, like, positioning statements and things like that are great when we want to explain to our team to make sure as a filter, but that's not how people think. People are emotional, distracted viewers that are on autopilot. So you want them to notice your brand in the cookie aisle. They need to be attracted to it, and then they need to get it. They need to get, oh, soft cookies with big chunks. Awesome. Oh, wait, triple mega ultra stuff Oreos. This is the ultimate achievement. This is the pinnacle of Oreos. I must get existence. Them. So I do love all the Oreo flavors. Don't get me wrong. Lemon has got to be one of the best ones. So at the end of the day, there are norms in every category. Yellow doesn't mean happy in the dental category. It's the last thing that's going to make your dentist happy. It means stained teeth.
Right.
And blue, may mean trust in the business category, but blue also means clean when we're talking about toilet bowl cleaner, because what other color are you going to want to see in a toilet cleaning your toilet? So there's certain nuances of what is expected mixed with what are the common lexicons of what people already know, those shared memories. And then there's the unique ones. And so the goal is actually to operate within those bounds. And so showing that you're different may actually alienate the category altogether. You may not make it to first base, or you may alienate your industry. So the goal is you and I could have the same exact cookie made by the same manufacturer with different packaging that gives a different feel, and sell it. And that's what private label branding is, where Kroger or Albertsons or the grocery store or Publix says, hey, we sell a lot of these other competitors. We'd love to offer like the high end, Hershey's or Godiva chocolate product, but then we want to offer our low economy product. And then we want to offer our medium product. And we want to capture the sales for everything but that, so that we can make more margin. So what do? They hire someone like myself to, in the example of cookies, come in, help them develop the perception that there are high-level cookies, there are low-level economy cookies, and then there's medium cookies, and then they can capture more of that money. So back to our question, marketing's goal is not actually to show that you are different. You can actually be the same. You could be better, yes. You could be different in a little bit, but we would want to say the word distinct. And the distinction often comes from the brand assets. It may not actually come from the product, because you could actually be the same product. So what we're dealing with is perception. So at the end of the day, we'd wanted to adjust our distinctive assets and that be the reason people remember us and have lots of those building memories. So,
Right.
wow. So let's go on to the second one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The
Okay.
second one.
What's the second question? I'm going to get this
The
one right.
second question. The statement is, we have a very specific, special customer that buys us. Like, they're a special customer, unique to us.
Right. Well, I'm not gonna fall for your tricks this time. I know that that in the business world where I'm coming from, not, I guess, trying to be all things to all people, trying to be right for everybody, jack of all trades, you end up really making less, by trying to have a broader appeal, you end up appealing to no one because you're not really great at anything or for any one type of person. So I would say true. You want to have a specific special customer or uniquely identified customer, because otherwise again, there's nothing that differentiates you. You're no reason why anybody would want to choose you from any particular background, right?
That's like some really good mental ninjaing and justification and processing. I really appreciate that. Unfortunately, it's just false, scientifically speaking. That, like, there's no good way to play this game without me sounding like the bad guy right now. That's great, and you're false. So believe it or not,
good try.
Good try, and you're wrong. No, believe it or not, let's take this as a moment to learn why it's false.
Okay.
So while I would love to entertain that idea, here's a question: if you have a brand and your goal is to make money or create impact, what other your values are, serve the most customers, based on your goals, do you want to serve the most customers or the least customers?
I mean,
you'd want to grow, right?
The most, yeah. I mean, do you want to
okay, so
sales, profit, company?
Right. If you knew that creating a specific customer type alienated and kept you from succeeding, would you do it?
Of course not.
Of course not. So let's break this down. So I always use this example that there is no such thing as Chloe, who's from Chicago, who loves teal, who uses Pinterest, who shops at Whole Foods, loves French bulldogs, and does yoga. And the reason this example is so funny is because it typifies this type of idea that we have about customer avatars. We tend to get lost in the demographics. And a lot of people like to say, well, we're going to add psychographics and understand how they feel. And yes, customer journey is important. But what's really, really interesting is, at the end of the day, more important than the psychographics and demographics is the sales frequency, and seeing that as the 30,000-foot view. We can dive back into those details later, and those may be details that we may find. It may be like a feminine product, like 98% of people who purchase this are women, and the 2% are men late at night, in the middle of the night, buying those products for their women or their wife or spouse or partner, So yes, some of those, we may wind up with that information, but we can't always start with that. The goal is to start with sales frequency, and sales frequency says light, sporadic, random, light, mild, moderate, and heavy. I tend to break it down into 4 categories. So it's light, mild, moderate, and heavy. A little known fact: if you buy 2 or more Coke products, and I'm drinking Coke Zero right now, I call it Man Coke. If you're drinking 2 or more of those a year, you're considered a heavy buyer.
2 a year. Well,
2 a year is all
I'm
you
buying
need.
3 to 5, every week or two. So
we're in the wrong industry.
2-liter bottles.
We're in the wrong industry, because when you look at their profit margins, when you look at their sales model, all they want to do is just sell 1 a year to one person for $1. And how many billions of dollars is that? That's their baseline. And I'm making that up a little bit, but the theory is pretty practical here, is that at the end of the day, according to Coca-Cola, that if you buy 2 or more, you're considered a heavy buyer. If you buy 1 a year, you're a light or sporadic buyer. So their sales model is predominantly based on capturing all the sales and having light, mild, moderate, and heavy. And so when we look at this, the great example I use is most people think Pareto's law applies to, 80% of our income comes from 20% of our clients. That's actually a misappropriation of that. That's for another podcast.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the profit that you would mark, your cap on your profit, or your profit caps out. There we go. There's the words. Your profit caps out at like 26% with your heaviest buyers. So even if you focused all your energy into your heaviest buyers all the time, you're still not going to get more than 23 to 25% of your margin.
Okay.
So that begs us like, wait, how do we get more money? Well, don't just focus on your heavy buyers. Mm-hmm. So a great example is a hobby. I do pottery. And so I have people who have bought whole sets for me. And then I follow up with them and say, hey, would you like to check out some of the new stuff I've got? What would you like to complete your set? So they're my like regular buyers. But then I do holiday sales. There's people that just want to buy an ornament from me for $20 and that's it. So in the business and consulting world, you may have your main package that's your go-to. And then you may have repeat clients that you have on a plan strategically. And so they're your heavier buyers. But what if somebody just needs like, hey, Ben or Stæven, can you just like help me out with this thing? That's what consulting is. And so you may create just a lower tiered offer as a way to gather more profitability. Mm-hmm. In the product world, think of ways to drive sales sporadically or randomly. Then think of coupons. You think of coupons, you think of sales events. The reason we tend to buy cars is not because we need a car, is because we're being prompted to buy a car and we need a car. So those sign to drive events and all those things, they may release a new car and that's great. This is the new Acura. There was a commercial for the new Acura on the Super Bowl a few years ago, but then they never did a follow-up, so nobody bought it. Mm-hmm. So you need to launch the product, give them a call to action, show them why, feature and benefit, and then share an experience. Oh, it's JD Powers and Associates with 5 gold stars. So the idea here is that we have a sales structure that prompts people to purchase according to the means that we want to increase. So if you're looking at your product or your sales force and saying, oh, wow, where are the gaps? We've got lots of heavy buyers. Well, what are ways that we can increase light buyers? What are ways that we can increase? So that is undone and made more complicated. Profitability is undone and complicated by having our super complex persona. Uh-huh. Now, I will add a little asterisk at the end of that and say your personas may be types of people. They may be types of roles. There's a friend of mine works over at Dell. He became a business acquaintance, and he's won several awards for their content because he understood that there's different types of people that are managers, technicians, supervisors, and leaders running companies. And they need different information and they come to Dell. Sometimes some of those people may be promoted, sometimes they don't. And so he developed this theory that a website was like a Rubik's Cube. People could enter through any side of the cube. And so these people had different needs, but it was based on the problems they wanted to solve. So problems and creating avatars based on problems and roles is fine. If I want to buy pet food, I want to buy kitten food because I have a kitten. I want to buy hairball and weight control because the problem or the goal that I have is I want a healthy cat. And the problem I want to solve is keeping them thin and trim. And the same goes for what are the goals and the problems. Sometimes people buy products because of joy too. So don't always think of it as problems, but thinking of it as what is their desired state. They want to go from here to here. And the more universal we make that in our understanding of our personas, the more effective we can be to drive sales in each of those different sales frequencies of light, mild, moderate, and heavy. No to the avatar, yes to the sales frequency, and yes to the problems and desired states that you want them to gain.
Got it. Okay. What's number 3? I
Okay.
see you're not a hypocrite when it comes to cats. I see behind you.
This is true. Yes. So that's Mr. Peanut Butter. He's my best friend, and he's the manager. He was coming in to check on us during today's
Nice.
podcast.
I hope he thinks you're doing a good job.
I hope so too. So
you're not going to trip me up on this third question.
So third question. We compete against specific competitors. And the example I'll use is luxury brands against luxury brands, economy brands against economy brands, and so on. So if you're a luxury brand, you compete against specific brands.
It does make sense, honestly, because if you're going to, it's going to be BMW versus Mercedes, something like that. It's not, or you're not going to go BMW or like a Corolla. I don't know, presumably at least. I don't know. That's what I would think. But
I was looking for my bell because I was going to ring it, but I'm not going to ring it because that's false.
That is just teasing me. Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Looking for my bell. Come on.
So no bell for you today. So what's interesting is that according to brands, I will use that button more often. It's broken actually. So according to brand science, all brands compete for the same mental space in your head, in their category.
All brands, meaning whether it's the Camry or the BMW.
So if you're talking about cars, all cars compete against all other car brands and brands their same size. So if I'm a business, I'm obviously going to measure my growth and size and profit according to my peers. So if you and I, like we're business buddies and you wanted to say like, hey, let's talk about our growth. And maybe we were in a mentor group. We would be, gauging our growth where we are. And we would using those numbers, be like, we're up 13%. Well, what's 13% to you? 13% to me. We would be gauging. So in a way, you can only effectively measure your impact and your sales according to someone who is approximately your size or near there to see a benchmark of market share that you have. Mm-hmm. But in the big picture, so it's good for comparison purposes, but in the big picture, people's evolutionary brains like to hold on to mental associations. And so it literally is competing for mental space and associations in your head.
Okay.
So all brands, if I'm looking for a handbag, the brand that has the most mental and physical availability, availability is the brand that grows. So mental availability, top of mindness, and physical availability, whether that's online. My cat's scratching my chair right in front of me while we're on the podcast. Love it. I can't throw anything at him. So mental availability and physical availability are the key two components of brand science. And so the brand that has the most top of mindness, now I go out in the world, so I see advertisements for Chobani yogurt. I see advertisements for Toyota Corolla. Then I go out in the world and then I get the product. I may go to a used car lot and say like, hey, we only have a budget for my son or daughter, for my child. We only have $2,500. What can we do? Or we only have, this limited budget. Well, let me show you. Well, what about this one over here? Because I remember Toyota Corolla actually, ranks really what. And that's where, not they get you, but that's where that space comes into play. Uh-huh. When you are ready to make a decision, you have a subconscious that is programmed with the associations that you have meant. That's why perception is so important. If you have a really, really, hokey pokey, homemade looking brand, and you're trying to show that you are, in fact, a top tier, worth every penny consulting firm or product, it's going to be really hard to do if the public perception is that you're not that. So perception influences the purchase. So perception influences the behavior. And so ultimately, we want to influence people by addressing their perception first. And so we address that by using those category norms, researching the category, looking and seeing where can we hit the ball. Oh no, we can't use the Nabisco trademark. We can't use that color because it's trade dress. Oh, these are certain IP that are registered on the USPTO that we cannot use. Don't want to do that. So that's where research comes really important in the front side of working with the brand, whether it's a new brand, growing brand, or a tired brand that wants to go from tired to inspired. We still have to do that research because those IP, that perception, and then those associations exist out there, whether you acknowledge them or not.
Right.
So ultimately, in addressing public perception, we can address people's motivation to purchase us using our distinctive assets. And by having those distinctive assets that are highly unique and famous in your category, people think of you first. So mental availability and physical availability. So if we want to accomplish that, the goal is to realize that we compete against all handbags, not just luxury handbags. We compete against all cars. And so then everyone's like, wow, well, then that means shouldn't I just be broadcasting my message all the time, everywhere? Actually, no. If you focus on having the most distinctive brand assets first and tell your brand story and have word, shape, color, illustrations, it's like Snickers bar. The other day I was hangry and someone said to me, literally, my significant other said to me, "You're not you when you're hungry." And I said, "Do you have a Snickers bar?" I said, "Do you have a Snickers bar?" And it's just a good example. We think of Snickers, the color, the typeface, maybe the celebrities that were, Betty White and Danny DeVito and some of these folks that were in that commercial, and you're not you when you're hungry. And so you think of all those things. And so if I am a current candy company or a current candy bar company or a new candy bar company or somebody who wants to reinvent my candy bar, I need to acknowledge that those associations exist. So to capture the most effect, even if I'm a luxury brand, even if I'm an economy brand, we have to realize that all those memories exist. And that's really the biggest thing that undoes when I talk about brand science. The biggest thing is that it's all about memories. Mm-hmm. And so I share with folks, what if I told you I could uncomplicate your marketing and I could make talking to your customers easier? And what if we could increase sales? And they're like, oh my gosh. And then I say, let's make memories together. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, actually, seriously, what if I told you there's a science of how we make memories? They'd be like, I don't know, who is this guy? So it's always funny. I always like to play that card a little bit because it sounds nebulous. It sounds weird.
Right.
But when we stand back, and we realize that mental availability, the memories, that top of mindness for people to think of us is based on our ability for them to recall us. Well, how do they recall us? Through the senses. What are the senses? Word, shape, color, form, sound, music, illustration, character, celebrity. And so there's over 13 sciences that I use to talk about this. And that's for my podcast that I got to go do sometime.
Right. More detail.
But we already talked about semiotics and how people put things in boxes. And so what it really comes down to is staying top of mind is really the ultimate goal. And so starting back to your question, how do you grow a brand, a successful brand? Whatever your category is, you got to research it. And you got to know what are the customer cues, what are the industry norms, and ultimately you want to have the most distinctive set of assets that you have, and more than just 3. You want to have as many as possible to have that top of mindness.
Right. That's awesome. It's super helpful. I mean, look, main takeaways, obviously, for me is, hopefully for those listening or watching this is, you want to be distinct, not necessarily different, but within category norms. You don't want to get too overcome and over obsessed with demographics, but more thinking about what kind of transformation are the people looking for whatever product or service you're selling. And finally, top of mindness, top of availability, mental and physical, across all products in your category, not just, your direct competitors or those that are most like you, because, the brain space isn't that differentiated, generally speaking. So
people only have one brain.
Right.
That's people only have one brain. So it's being the person that they associate with the thing that you do.
Right. Awesome. Stæven, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking out the time, explaining all this stuff.
Thanks for having me. And thanks everyone who's listening at home. Hopefully you have learned some new things today, and maybe you got those questions right and Ben got them wrong.
Yeah.
If so, let's talk about it.
I did. The second, people can learn more about you and what you do, what Stæven Frey does at quantumbranding.agency.
Yep.
Really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And we'll see everybody else on the other side. Thanks.
You're listening to Win Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.